victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold this!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host John, also known as 4020, and joining me for a rather historic episode of the Tip Sheet is my good mate Sixties, also known as Craig, as well as AJ from League Scene, reprising his outstanding trip on the podcast the other week. We're here to talk about some junior reps, boys, and like I said, a historic podcast for a historic moment between two of Sydney's big clubs in the Parramatta Eels and the Sydney Roosters, with not one, not two, but three teams taking on each other in the junior rep grand finals in an unprecedented weekend for the Roosters and the Eels. Fellas, I'll run it by you now. 60s, AJ, how you doing?
John, outstandingly well. Got up to training today, watched the NRL team go through their paces. But I was just thinking, listening to the intro, and we've got the commentary there. There might come a time in the future when it's
there could
AJ.
Be another voice. Exactly, AJ's there.
Yeah, familiar voice that's there. So, AJ, how are you doing, mate?
Good weekend, to be honest, lads. It was a really nice one just to be able to watch some footy, go out to Redfern over the weekend, watch a good Matt's team in the Warriors go through to the grand final for the second year running. And then, as I said in the comments on the tip sheet during the week, and as I said in the call, it felt like Parramatta got back to sort of what we're known for in the Mats this season, and it should be an absolute epic grand final against my Roosters on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. But what we're going to do today for our listeners, and also a quick shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and especially Parramatta Leagues Club, the home of the Eels, because we're covering the junior reps here, and they are massive supporters of junior rugby league in the Parramatta district. They make it affordable for young people to play rugby league, and of course that helps with bringing through the future lifeblood of the game in the Parramatta district. So what we're doing today, this is a special grand final preview podcast. We've been doing our special junior reps preview podcasts for probably about the last month and a half. And this is now, I guess, the culmination of that. And as we said, what better outcome could we have than having three teams in the grand final? That's quite historic because two of those teams, in the Lisa Fiaola and the Tarsha Gale, it's their first ever grand final. The Eels obviously are the most successful club in SG ball and mats in the history of the game, but you've now got a club that's become a powerhouse in pathways football in the Roosters through their different avenues of development, being the Sydney Roosters, the Central Coast Roosters, and of course the Indigenous team. So what better person to have with us on this podcast than AJ, who has that breadth of knowledge across the junior reps through calling multiple games for Bar TV Sports throughout the season. And so he's not only a Roosters supporter and has an intimate knowledge of the Roosters players, but also has that, I guess, that great general knowledge of what's been happening in each of those grades throughout the season. So, AJ, we really appreciate you joining us for this. John, let's kick it off with the Lisa Fiaola Cup. That's the first game. We'll go in order of the matches, except for when we get to the mats. We'll because the Eels aren't involved in the mats, we're going to leave that to the last, but we will get AJ's takes on that and a tip from him for the winner of the mats grand final.
Yeah, so Lisa Fiaola Cup grand final sees the Central Coast Roosters taking on the Parramatta Eels. The Eels punched their ticket to the grand final after losing to the Roosters, and we'll talk about that briefly in the first round, 24-14. They came back against the Penrith Panthers, winning 26-12, and then having that epic against the Canterbury Bulldogs last week, 22-20. Meanwhile, the Roosters, they got their way into the grand final qualifier directly after beating the Eels in the first week of the finals because of the top 4 bracket. And then they got over the West Tigers 22-16 out at the Oaks as well, playing that double. Not a doubleheader, it was more than 2 games there, but a doubleheader in the Lisa Fiaola there. And so now the two teams look like this, boys. 10:30 a.m. kickoff out at Leichardt Oval. I'll go through the Roosters first, and if I've got any names wrong, AJ, be sure to pull me up because obviously not familiar with this bracket of the roster. But at fullback, you've got Stella Hall. On the wings, Marley Griswood and Coco Butcher. Is she related to the Butcher Boys?
I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Whenever you see those similar surnames, it always just like makes you tweak. Oh, is that a brother or a sister? In the centres, Talia Berryman and Coco Masters. Their captain is Mia Va'atua. Talia Tonga is the halfback. In the front row, Kiwa Kahuroa. Meg McPhail is at dummy half. And now the game centre's missing the prop forward and the number 10 jersey here, so I'll get on that in a second. But in the back row, you've got Gemma Wooden, Alia Temete, Anastasia Alia Tupui, and then on the bench, Ava Papali or Papali'i, but I think it's Papali because there's no apostrophe here. Morgan Koenig, that's a good NRLW name right there.
The sister of Olivia Koenig, that one.
Yes, so I was going to say that's a strong NRLW surname right there. McKenna Hammond and then Pesalili Star combo. 18th player, Emily Rose Hall. It's a very good Central Coast team, boys. I'm just going to see if I can pull up who might be the prop from the other game. So it was Star Arthur Clark was when we played the Roosters last, was the prop. And then last week, let me just check who was there. It was Star Arthur Clark. So for whatever reason, Star's name has been pulled out of the match centre. I'm not sure why. But
Was that right? There's 2 players named Coco?
Yes.
Coco
Yeah.
Masters, Coco Butcher, yes.
That's amazing.
So-
That's another history moment.
Yeah,
for
and it's Coco
Rugby
Masters,
League.
like as in Ethan Masters or the player that was for the West Tigers once. So I'm not sure if that's a familial connection there. But yeah, it's a very good Roosters team. And I'll let you talk about them shortly, AJ, because I'll go through the Eels first. But on the other side of the lineup here for the Parramatta Eels, making sure I can get my tab back. There we go. We've got the one change this week from the team that beat the Bulldogs. At fullback, it's Ire Sevilla. And then the change this week is Sienna Bonello, who's been the starter on that left wing all season, 60s. She comes back in for Hine Rikiti, who did a great job against the Bulldogs, scored that wonderful 50-metre try from the scrum. On the opposite flank, you got Freedom Crichton Rapati, Georgia Wanzi at left centre, and Cody Tuamasevi at right centre. Sharon Latapu and Tamika Withers in the halves. Front row is Olivia Saba, Bailey Marchong, the captain at dummy half, and Isabella Bell. Kaizen Morgan Pritchard on the right edge and Mitzi Cairns on the left. Katia Duff at lock forward. Alicia Meza, Mere Sivo, Kavinia O'Callaghan Ahio, and Evelyn Kuwendu round out the interchange options. And then I mentioned it just then, but Hine Rikiti is the 18th player, and Halo Talangi, the secondary reserve there. 2 very, very good teams. They've done all the hard yards to get there. You don't get to these grand finals running through some of the powerhouse teams of competition without pulling out some big results. And AJ, I'll let you walk us through first what you've seen from the Roosters this year, because obviously we did have that one clash in the week 1 finals to talk about. But who are the stars for the Roosters? Who are going to be the difference makers in this contest for the Tricolours?
Well, I think the halves. I think Mia Va'atua has been one of our best players there this season. She's just dictated terms. I think Talia Tonga as well. But I like the back row and lock. So we have Alia Temete, who has been absolutely blitzing it over the course of the final series. And then Anastasia Letope. She's been also very, very strong in the middle third for them. I like the way our edges combine, and I think Morgan Koenig gives us a bit of X factor off the bench. But the thing that worked in our favour in the first week of the finals was a 79% completion rate. Parramatta completed very poorly, made a lot of mistakes. We kind of got the run on yous in that opening 15 minutes where we got 3 tries on yous and we got up to 18-0. And then we kind of put the gas burners on a little bit. And then we go forward back to the game against the Tigers. Again, fast start. That's the thing that the Eels are going to have to prepare for. The Roosters are a fast starting team. We let the Tigers back into it. We managed to get that try late to Leia Tonga to win the match last weekend. So I think if Parramatta can weather the early storm, then this grand final is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, that match in the first week of the finals, it was like a game of 2 halves where I thought the Eels were lucky that the score didn't blow out beyond the 18-0. And then in the second half, it was very much a case of tactically the Eels changed what they were looking to do. Well, either it changed or the coach reinforced this was the match plan. Let's stick with the match plan, which was the attack straightened up a lot. There was a lot of going in back behind the ruck from the forwards. They had a lot of success in doing that. So it will be interesting to see what happens this week, AJ, because I thought Ryan Walker really engineered that win against the Bulldogs so superbly last week in taking the Bulldogs to a place they hadn't been before, which was A, scoreboard pressure, and B, fatigue. And and that really came about through a good kicking game, so constantly turning the team around. I'm not sure what the completion rate was, John, but it had to have been a little bit better than what it had been in the earlier in week one of the finals anyway.
It was, if I got the team stats up now, 80%, 24 of 30, with a slight edge in possession, 53 to 47%, which is, when we were doing our preview, that's exactly what we're talking about, that you can't afford to give cheap ball to the Dogs. And when the Eels did it twice in that game, the Dogs scored twice. And for the rest of the game, they held on to the ball. That was 2 of their 6 incomplete sets right there that led directly to points. And from that point, after the 10th point of being scored, those 2 tries, the Eels really tightened up their security, or ball security.
Yeah, it made a big difference that the Bulldogs they had to go for the most part of the game further than 60, 70 metres in their set of 6 to be able to score. With that kicking game, even though they were making a lot of metres, they weren't setting up. The only danger was going to be from repeat sets. And as you said, the Eels made a couple of mistakes early in the set at their own end, and the Bulldogs were able to score from those. Of course, they were a big, powerful team, and if you're giving them possession inside your red zone, you're in trouble. So this week, as you said, AJ, the Roosters, the start that they made really caught Parramatta on the back foot in that first week of the finals, and it really took a half-time break for the Eels to compose themselves. So, John, who's going to help outside of the coach and his match plans? Who's going to be the main players for the Eels that are going to engineer this win?
Based on what we saw last week, I think you can point to Ire Sevilla and Bailey Marchong as perhaps integral in the game plan. Sevilla's hit-ups on the 4th tackle and then Bailey Marchong's craft on the last to really take the pressure off her 6 and 7 for the field position kicking was really important. But as AJ alluded to, the Roosters really blitzed the Eels and the Tigers too, which means that you're going to need just strong defense through the middle and the edges. It's going to be a combined arms approach defensively to make sure you're not too far behind the 8 ball. You mentioned Mia Vaatua being really good, and I agree, AJ. I thought she was outstanding when the Eels met against her in the first week of the finals. Combined really strong with back rolls on both sides of the ruck, if I recall correctly, just being a real menace floating around both sides of the ruck. So you've really got to have your call-outs ready for when she's drifting. If she's off her natural edge, the defense need to be identifying her and putting the extra hat on a hat there to make sure they don't get a spot runner coming free. And so that's going to fall a lot on the halves to communicate. For the Parramatta Eels, Latapo and Withers really have to be controlling their edges in defence and conducting the player-to-player assignments. Beyond that, 60s, the player that maybe, and look, we've had a lot of good performers in the finals. Kaiser Morgan-Pritchard's been excellent. I mentioned Bailey Marchong, Ire Sevilla. The halves have been very tidy. The player that I'm waiting for to have a big game is Freedom Crichton-Rapati. She hasn't been bad, 60s, but I'm just waiting for her to have one of those games we've seen from her for most of the year through the regular season. And I think if she gets fired up for this one, if she can have a couple of big touches, they could be the difference between the two teams if the Eels are in the contest, that is.
Well, she did provide, I thought, a turning point last week in that game against the Bulldogs when she took the quick tap, and got that 50, 60 metre run and that set the play up for the Eels to strike at a time where they really needed to, because I think it had only been just before that the Bulldogs themselves had scored after taking the quick tap, their 5-8.
Their captain of 5-8 got the quick tap penalty into a quick tap score, yeah.
AJ, I've got to ask you, you saw this season unfold. In all honesty, did you see anyone beating the Bulldogs this year?
No, not at all. I did not see them. I thought if the Central Coast Roosters may have gotten a chance, I would have loved to have seen that matchup because it was 1v2. Defensively, they were very compatible as far as points conceded per game. So I would have liked to have seen them going head-to-head. But I think that anyone had a chance of beating beating the Bulldogs, I think is a long shot given their pedigree in this competition. And you mentioned earlier in the week the 90s that they put on teams as well. It's been quite insane what they've been able to do in this pathway over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I'm still reflecting back on it. I'm still stunned by the win that the Eels, that they were able to get. But it basically came from following a game plan and the high completion rate. And I guess you don't know what a team is truly made of until if they've enjoyed such lopsided scores, they've never been tested, and they were finally tested. And what do you know? The errors happened. A team that just rolled over the top of other opponents, suddenly they weren't used to this, and the mistakes came. So. I think we're going to get a really tight grand final here, AJ. It's going to be interesting to see if it plays out in a different way to what we might expect. So we're expecting the Roosters to jump out, maybe take an early lead, and for the Eels to look to fight back. It'll be interesting if it takes a different permutation this week, because I think no matter what the permutation is, I think we're going to get a close game.
Yeah.
So if it's anything like the edge of the seat stuff that we sat through last week, we're going to really enjoy how the day kicks off out at Leichardt on Saturday, because I hope that people get out there early to watch this first game, because I think they're going to where the female pathways has got to in such a short period of time is remarkable. When you think this competition, the Lisa Fiaola Cup, did not exist. Only, this is only their second year of it being a true competition. It was literally just a 4-round, exhibition tournament, really, before that. So, and I think even before that, it was like a one-day.
Like a carnival, yeah.
Like a carnival. So, and the standard of football that we're seeing, you're literally watching these players and going, she'll play in RLW, she'll play in RLW, she'll play in RLW. And then when you see some of the young players that are in NRLW right now, it's when people wonder where will the players come from, they're coming from this competition. They're coming from Tarsha Gale. Like it's real, it's here, it's now as a good standard of football. So I encourage supporters to get out there, both Roosters and Eels supporters, from the start of the day at Leichardt Oval. Fellas, let's just get a tip then. We can't sit on the fence. We can't say it's going to be a close one. I suspect we're all going to stick with our teams.
Somehow I've got the feeling that we're both going to be shooting from the hip for our teams, yeah.
I was going to say,
AJ, you lead off. Give us your winner, your predicted score, and who will be the best player on the field.
Giving me the tough job off the bat. I like it. But I think it's going to be a bit interesting, this grand final. Parramatta, the question marks are going to be, how are they going to respond? Like last week was such a big step up as far as knocking off Canberra. How much did it take out of them? Meanwhile, for the Central Coast Roosters, their coaching staff has been in Women's State of Origin camp. Fressard, Kelleher, Kelly. All three of them have been in reps this week. We'll touch on the Roosters with Keely Davis and Tarsha Gale in a moment. So different preparations going on this week with the Roosters and with Parramatta. But I think the Roosters have done enough throughout the year to be champions. It's going to be a fast start. I think Parramatta claw it back. So I'm going to go with 28-18. And I'm going to go with Mia Valtua, player of the match.
Okay, John?
Yeah, of course, backing the blue and gold here. Score, so we had 24-14 the last time those two teams met, and then both teams were sort of floating around that 20-point mark, 22 points each actually, against 20 and 16 for their respective opponents. So I will go 26-20 Eels win, so fairly high scoring relative to what we've seen. I will go the best on field for the Eels. Well, I tipped her to be the key, so I'll go Freedom Crichton Rapati 60s. I'll go for the winger. Bit of a rogue pick there, but she's got the talent to do it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go for a repeat of the scoreline against the Bulldogs, with the Eels winning 22-20.
I don't know if my heart can take another 2-point like that, mate. Come on.
And us sitting on the edge of the seats, or all supporters on the edge of the seat. And as far as my predicted best on field, I'm going to go with, I think, really a key player for the Eels in Bailey Marchong.
Nice. All righty, so that wraps up
with another kick, conversion.
Banged it off the uprights. Oh, don't you dare. Don't you dare. All right, so that wraps up the Lisa Fiaola, the first on our docket of 3 games between the two clubs, plus obviously AJ's quick take on the Harold Matthews. We move on now to the Tarsha Gale, where again it is the Eels taking on the Roosters of the Indigenous Academy flavour. Sorry, I got there. Now these two teams, they did it the hard way to get to the finals. Parramatta Eels qualifying in 5th, the Roosters qualifying in 7th, which meant they were both in the lower bracket. Sudden death every round through to the grand final. The Indigenous Academy knocked over the Knights in a nail-biter, 26-24 in the first week. The Eels accounted for the Cronulla Sharks in a big revenge game, 32-12. That takes us through to the next week, where again the Roosters met the Tigers with the same scoreline, 22-16. Wow, that is really fascinating stuff there. So similar scorelines, similar teams across different grades there. Eels taking on the Panthers in the second week of the finals. Too good, 28-14. And then, of course, that brings us through to the grand final qualifiers, where the Indigenous Academy dusted up the Steelers nicely there down at the Oaks, 30-14. And the Eels did a solid job against the Dogs, 18-8 to punch their ticket to the grand final, which means they arrived here on Saturday, 1:30 p.m, looking like this on both sides of the park. For the Roosters, they've got Logan Fletcher at fullback, Jada Durham and Manisha Seebeck on the wings. You've got Caitlin Whitehead and Tyra Ekapati in the centres. Their captain is Georgie Barrett, and she'll be in the number 6 in the 5'8" slot. Jayla Dicker will partner her in the halves. In the front row, it's Terakura Leaf and Ellie Brenda, with Marley Cashin at dummy half. Lacey Cross and Zoe Lee are in the back row. Luca Bella Ngatura Ongli is the lock forward. Sorry if I've got that one, Luca Bella. It's a big mouthful there, though, with the double hyphens, the old double barrel. Then on the interchange, we've got Aaliyah. Another Aaliyah. That's 3 Aaliyahs between the Eels and the Roosters here. It must have been a very popular name in that time, because obviously the age bracket's very similar here. Aaliyah Boland, and all spelt the same way. Lily McLean, Grace Dabin, and Aaliyah Nasio, who's spelt the same way but 1 A instead of 2. Excuse my just tangential thoughts here, but Tyra Dimmick is on the bench. Is the reserve. She's got the number 15, but she's the reserve. Aaliyah Nasio has the 23, but has been promoted to the interchange. So that is the Roosters team. And then on the other side of the field for the Eels, they've got a single change this week as well, based on the team that beat the Dogs. At fullback, it's Dallas Graham-Wivel, Sualo Lafonga, and Avinia Rakoma Ngata are on the wings. You've got Aaliyah Scrivens and Maria Fasavalu Farmasuli in the centres. Kylea Gray and Aaliyah Sufan, so there's another Aaliyah for you, in the halves. Then you've got Taylor Falanico and Tess McWilliams as the bookends, with Ava Jones at dummy half. Fontaine Tafua and Matoisha Kalepo will be running the edges for the Blue and Gold. Riverly Arlaw at lock forward. On the interchange, Rory Mueller, the dummy half utility. Lily Etapuli, Armani Lee Avae, and then Blessing Don Venecam, Blessing, who comes into the team this week in the place of, I believe it was, I had the note here and now I've forgotten it. It was O'Loughlin, I believe, Alana O'Loughlin, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm not sure what's happened to Alana.
Yep.
Injury, suspension, something like that, obviously. And then you've got the two reserves, Shia Tokulich and Anahiro Paekau. So, like I said, 1:30 p.m. kickoff here, guys. Two very good teams. The only two teams in these three finals that we're previewing that did not meet each other at any point this year. So they're sort of punching in the dark here, just using their video previews and tape to feel each other out. And what does that mean for this contest, AJ? Because they don't have a real sense for how each other play. And obviously you do your film review and preview, obviously. But it's not the same as playing and understanding the timings on how a player might run and how hard they hit and what sort of skills they have on the field. Does that favour anyone in particular, or does that just set the table for a real big sort of, what's the term I'm looking for, like a sort of feel-out period, a get to know each other window in that first 10 to 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think it's the latter there, John, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a very interesting sort of opening to this one. The Roosters have had a bit of an up and down year. It's been a season where we haven't found our consistency. We'd go a loss with a low completion rate 1 minute, and then we'd come out with a massive win the next week. Like we started the year very poorly against the Tigers. We came out the next week and absolutely thrashed Newcastle, had some consistent wins. Then we dropped a couple of games and we're sort of skating that finals tightrope a little bit. Fortunately, those wins we had in the regular season were big enough by a bigger for and against to get us in. And every single finals game has been tight. Like the Knights game, we went to extra time. The Tigers game, we won off a last-second charge down, which was picked up by someone who was initially offside, who runs away to score under the sticks. And then the Illawarra game was the first sort of time this final series where we found our identity as a team, the way we wanted to play. And again, like there's some really good players here. Like Lacey Cross on the edge is a really dynamic player. We've got an NRLW contractor player in here, which is Narcio on the bench, 23, sort of tall, rangy player who can move around the middle third of the field. But I think it's going to be a huge test for our girls because I really enjoyed calling your forward pack a couple of weeks ago out at Parker Street against the Panthers. The way Falanico and McWilliams moved through the middle third. But the wild card for me is Riley Arlo. I really like watching her play. She's just so... The way she moves, the way she's able to hit in contact in defence, it does sting you. And I think that could be a real challenge for these Roosters forwards just to match the intensity of those three forwards I mentioned for the Eels.
Yeah, a lot of the Eels punch through the middle. Or like the Eels work really well as a pack, like that as a unit. You use that term with the Roosters about finding their identity, and I think that's what the Eels have done in this latter season surge that they've had. It's their identity to me is one where they play a very physical game through the middle, and players like Rivalialo are integral to that. She's ably supported, of course, by the others that are there in that pack with her, and a player that's had a great end to the season has been Tess McWilliams. Like she's improving week upon week and really impacting she's integral to what they're doing. So, but it's a well-balanced team, the Eels, and I think when they beat the Bulldogs in that last regular round, that was a statement game for them, and I think it firmed their belief in what they're capable of doing, because much like the Roosters, theirs was a little bit up and down because they started the season off with massive scores. In retrospect, they were playing teams that were down towards the bottom end of the table. Then they got the shock of their lives when the Sharks ambushed them out there at Cronulla, and that it was like it put them off their game, because the next week they looked nothing like themselves when they fell to the Panthers. And then they've sort of gradually built back up again to the point where I think Shah Henry, the coach, has timed their run to perfection. I'm really interested, AJ, in what the difference is this year with the Roosters Indigenous Academy, because John and I are used to them being like one of the most dominant teams in the Tarsha Gale competition. Like before the Bulldogs started assembling these powerhouse teams, it was the Roosters who dictated terms up the top of the table. and could play some of the most incredible female pathways football. Like, you'd sit there and you'd just marvel at the skill set that was there. Has there been a reason for their performance during the regular season? We've seen, obviously, they've got themselves into the grand final, and that's all that matters ultimately at this point. Like, it's now just winning one game and they've got the title. But what's been the difference this year to previous years for them?
Well, we've revamped our pathway program for the women considerably over the last couple of seasons. We had Blake Cannavaro, who was over there. He went over to the Bulldogs. He's not there anymore for the reasons that have come out in the media. So we've had a massive shift in the way our pathway program has gone. John Strange has taken on much more of a role there this season. So it's all about finding our balance in a way. And like, we managed to get through it last year, okay, but then as a result, a lot of those players went up into NRLW, Harvey Norman and whatnot, and we had to basically bring the players up from Fiaola last year, which made the finals, into that Tarsha Gale program. And we've had a couple of NRL players in there, Ekapati, who's in the centres, and Narcio, who played NRLW, so they know what it takes. So I think it's all been about a learning curve. Plus, we've got new coaches as well. Keely Davis and Corbin Baxter this year, who are our coaches. It's all new for them as well. So it's all about trying to find that balance, and it did take a while for them. We had some really nice results, like we had that thumping win over Newcastle I alluded to earlier, but then we had some really disappointing losses in there. Like, we lost to Illawarra in a game we should have won. Canberra was one that we should have had back. We were really disappointing in that one. We just dropped the ball a lot in that game. And then we've had games where we've been really strong, but I think 4-4 based off the year is a fair representation of the year. And then we had those tough finals that I mentioned. We've knocked over some highly skilled opposition. We knocked over Newcastle in Golden Point. They're always up there in the pathways. Then we've knocked over third place and first place, which is a very fair effort in this competition. And Illawarra only lost one game this season before that point as well. So we did very well just to time our run in that retrospect. It's going to be interesting to see how Corbin juggled the prep herself this week with Keely Davis being away in the camp. But I think both sides have earned their place here from the bottom half of the bracket. I don't think that's been done in this sort of format before. I think we'd have to go and check the record books for that one. But
I can't recall having two bottom four bracket teams coming through. Yeah, it's a big achievement for both of them because you got to run that gauntlet, 3 games to get to the big dance.
There's no room for error.
No.
Yeah. So, John, who's the key players for us in this one?
Yeah, I mean, you guys hinted at it before, but you really look at that starting middle trio, Falanico, McWilliams, and Arlo. They really hold Parramatta's destiny in their hands. The platform that they can lay, the plus meters over the ad line they can get consistently will be really key for opening up the game for Sufan and Gray in the halves, and then Graham Wivel, obviously, a dummy half fullback as well. Beyond those three, because that is sort of like a given, I think the bench has been pretty key for the Eels in recent weeks, 60s. Lily Atapuli, Ava'e. Obviously, there's no O'Loughlin this week, and she's been very good for the Eels off the interchange throughout that back half of the season. So what Blessing can bring to the team is going to be interesting. But beyond that, yeah, look, their backline isn't anything. I wouldn't say the backline's super flashy, but they're all really hard workers. Lafonga, Scrivens, Fasaval, Lufamasuli, and Rakoma Rangata all have their moments, which means, again, it comes back to that platform. I just can't go past the 8, the 10, and the 13 here. And then Fontaine as well, who has been very good as well. But I think that middle trio, that triumvirate, they're the ones that hold the key to the Eels for this one, right?
Yeah, I'm going to mention Kylia Gray because it's been interesting watching her passage through this competition because I think she was coming off the bench.
Interchange forward to
interchange middle.
Yep.
At the start of the season through to obviously starting, but then being moved out to the centres.
Correct, right centre. Yeah.
And now at 5'8". I mean, that's an extraordinary way for a player's season to work out. And she brings a real X factor because she's got the physicality of a forward, but then she's got some really silky skills with the ball work. And I can see why Shah moved her into the halves, because, you know, she's going to be able to, she will create things. Now, it wasn't what you'd call a flashier game from her last week, but you know that she's got that potential in her to be someone who can change the direction of a game.
Still had 2 try assists or involvements with her boot 60s.
Yeah.
Ava Jones and Tess McWilliams tries were off her boot.
Yeah, so that was, it was a clever kick over the top. It was so awkward for the Bulldogs, that one that was scored by Ava Jones.
Yeah, Avinia Rangata swooped on it and then found Ava in support on the left.
Yeah, and that was all about a kick going into. I know that Damien Fleming uses great terminology when he's talking about the cricket and where the ball is pitched, but it was certainly in that area of
the corridor of uncertainty.
Yeah, the corridor of uncertainty for the Bulldogs winger, it was a great way that Avina was able to swoop on that ball and beat the first couple of defenders, and then find Ava in support. And she's, and as you said, like, she's still, even though maybe she mightn't have been mentioned in the top 3 performers in last week's game, she's producing moments like that in a game. Yep. So that's why I'm looking towards what Kylia Gray will be able to provide in this game. But for me, this is a team where maybe it's harder to single out individuals like that, because, as I said, they function so well as a unit and they found their identity. And I'm just looking forward to seeing more of the same from them. Again, I think it's going to be a tight game. So let's go for the predictions. AJ, you're going to lead it off again, mate.
I think that the Roosters have had to play 3 really, really tough games. I'd question how much it's taken out of them, but I'm going to have a hand on my heart here.
Yeah, you got to back the guy.
Back the fairy tale finish from 7th.
Yep.
Back the fairy tale finish from the bottom half of the 8. I think that it's been, well, for either team, it's a fairy tale finish, let's be honest. But I like what Keely Davis has done with this team week on week. I'm going to go a tight game. I think around a 22-16 mark. Again, 22-16. It's going to be one of those ones. But as far as the player of the game, I'm going to favour Georgie Barrett.
Okay, John?
Yeah, of course, going with the Eels here. And I think we wouldn't have these podcasts if AJ wasn't going for the Roosters and we weren't going for the Eels. Might as well hand in our memberships, honestly. But, yeah, for the Parramatta Eels 60s, I sort of spelt it out among that middle trio who are going to be the key player here. If I had to single one out, geez. Look, Tess McWilliams is the hot hand. Riverley Arlaw's got the ability to just ball play through contact as well. Maybe I'll go off the lock forward for the best player for the Eels, en route to a 22-12 win. And so a little bit more open there, but that is very generous as well, because you just see another close game here. And I think, again, it's just going to be a great game. The fact that these two teams haven't matched up adds just a really interesting layer of intrigue to it. Who's going to be more assertive? Who's going to take the risks early on? Who's going to challenge or be passive and absorb the pressure? I don't know. We're going to have to find out on Saturday.
And I think what AJ mentioned is quite relevant. Has either team played their grand final at any point in this run of sudden death matches? Because if anything had gone wrong at any point, that's the end of their season. So even like from the Eels' perspective, although I think our spot was guaranteed on for and against, we needed that win in the last week
to get the ball rolling,
the regular rounds.
Exactly.
Yeah. So look, I'm gonna tip the Eels to win by 28-18 in this one, and given that I've already given her a bit of a rap, I'll nominate Kylia Gray as the likely best player on field. However, John, it would not surprise if River Liala was also prominent in that. So that brings us now to the SG Ball grand final, the last grand final of the day.
And
we'll preview that first.
What a fascinating match too, because of the history between these two teams this year. It's not often that you meet 3 times in the course of one junior rep season, but that is the case here for the Roosters and the Eels, going through from a round 2 draw, where the Roosters stormed back into that one, through to the round 1 finals loss for the Parramatta Eels, where the Roosters gave them an almighty beating, 32-12, and that sort of leads us in nicely to their run to the final. The first place Eels and the 4th place Roosters meeting in that aforementioned week 1 final, where the Roosters jumped out for a really great game plan and aggressive use of defense to ambush the Eels 32-12. That gave them the week off, straight through to the grand final qualifier. Meanwhile, the Eels had to fend off the Melbourne Storm in the following week, 24-12. And then in the grand final qualifiers, AJ called this game out at Redfern Oval, did a great job too. Eels rediscovered their mojo, their moxie, just in time for the big dance, dispatching of the Rabbitohs 34-4 in a very... I mean, the Rabbitohs team is very talented, but that was a one-sided game. Meanwhile, Raiders doing a very solid job against the Raiders out at Leichardt Oval, getting a 28-16 victory under their belt to book their ticket to the big dance, which means the two teams now look like this. At fullback for the Tricolours, it's Jackson Stewart. You've got EJ Mahu-Delamere and Mikey Nassar on the wings. In the centres, Brooklyn Heath and Louis Lee, the 3 and 4. A very talented halves combination of Tyson Walker and Toby Rodwell. Tyson, I believe, is Sam Walker's younger brother, right, AJ? And Toby is a top 30 contracted young half, so a very talented player there. And then in the front row, you've got Peter Benjamin Uwini, Kanan Magelli? Magelli. And then Liam Bell at dummy half. I do note that the very talented dummy half you had in round 2, Jackson Allen is still out, is he, for the season?
Yeah, he's out for the season with a broken jaw.
Yeah, oh, jeez, that's rough. He did a great job against the Eels back in round 2. But into the back row now, you got Darcy Smith and James Finnegan, Josiah Fezalai, at lock forward. Then on the interchange, a very familiar name there for both the Tricolours and the Blue and Gold, Eddie Kalis, a surname that's been a very worthy servant for both teams there. Then you got Kainan Toavai, Etuli Seve, who had a good game starting against the Eels in that round 1 finals or week 1 finals game, and then Philip Lavakiaho, and then Brooklyn Rosemeyer as their reserve. Then for the Eels, 60s, it was a nervous wait from this one because there were a couple of Eels put on report, and I was like, please don't spoil the grand final for a couple of big time suspensions there. But the Eels look to have pulled through the MRC and then judiciary unscathed, which means it is an unchanged team. Cameron Bamwood at fullback, Dom Ferrugia running that right sideline with Aidan Kaburian down the left, Anders Johansson and Nathan Howard in the centres, Lorenzo Talatana and Lincoln Fletcher are the 5'8" and halfback respectively. Front row, you got Isaac Jim, the big mountain man there, starting alongside Ryder Talangi, Lachlan Kainakis at dummy half, Josiah Funo Ayuta on the right edge and captain, Chris Petrus on the left, Max Pope at lock forward, Tom Summer, Wesley Picotti, Elijah Shane Tapau, sorry, my dog just coughed, Elijah Shane Tapau, and then Mark Williams on the interchange. 2 reserves for the Eels, Varima Sakuru and Bo Lucian. 3:15 p.m. kickoff this one, fellas. So it is the capstone game on the weekend. Obviously, the Harold Matthews falls in between the Tarsha Gale and the SG Ball there. But this is the capstone game, the big one. And look, the Roosters, they've given it to the Eels this year. Like a draw and a loss from Parramatta's perspective, have set the table here for a huge battle. The Tricolours have been very aggressive, AJ, in how they've taken on the Eels. Good line speed, aggressive defense, really disruptive play. Is that going to be the key for them in this one? And in that case, who are the key players for the Roosters on Saturday?
I think that is going to be the key. And, with any Boyd caught in the team, defence is going to come first. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've seen throughout the final series so far. It would not surprise me one bit if Aitula Seve starts for Peter Benjamin Ayuni, because that's been the key for the final series. And he's gotten better game on game. He didn't play in the round 2 draw because we were still a little bit trying to get him back across from Canterbury with him and his brother Fanafu, who's in our flag program. Jackson Allen, as we mentioned, he's out with a broken jaw. He injured that when he moved up to New South Wales Cup when SG Ball had the bye, because he had to go up he had to go up because we had a hooking crisis at our club for a little bit, and he was the
Jeez.
designated hooker too. Lachlan Dooner's another one who hasn't played in the final series either. He's the one that they've got high raps on there. But as far as players to watch, I mentioned O'Toole Sebe. I like our back row corps, Darcy Smith in particular, the King Cumber product. He runs a very good line. His combination with Tyson Walker was a very key part of that semi-final route of Parramatta. He went out that right edge a couple of times. And then Toby Rodwell's kicking game. I really like the battle of these halves here. I think they're the best two halves partnerships in the competition, having called Parramatta the last 3 weeks as well. I'm very familiar with the way that they play. Be interesting if Lincoln Fletcher's okay. He did cop a bit of a knock after a late shot.
You're right. He was dusty, yeah. Took his time to get into his feet. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a bit dusty in that one, so hopefully he pulls through for your sakes. But the key is the middle. And you guys, I think that was where you really stood up against South Sydney, was dominating that middle third matchup. And what that did, it started a little bit scratchy, but then you forced a minimum mistake. Talangi charged over off the tap mirror, and it was just all over Red Rover with 3 tries in the space of about 10 minutes there. So, and I think the Roosters had a similar way in the first week of the finals. I think Josiah made a mistake off the scrum. We got a couple of quick tries before halftime, and I think we're out to 23-0.
The back rowers, you mentioned them, Smith and Finnegan, they put daggers into the Eels before halftime, tries in the 28th and 32nd minutes, and the Eels did score on the other side of halftime with Lincoln Fletcher going on that long-range try down the right, but those 2 tries before the break really put you guys in the ascendant seat there, and it was just too much to come back from. So, very talented team.
There's a word that we used, John, about how the Eels performed against South, which was, we said they brutalised South. And I think it's fair to say that the Roosters brutalised Parramatta
and Rick
in that
the
first
finals.
week.
Absolutely. Yeah, very similar blueprints between the 2 games there.
Yeah, the Eels weren't used to being physically dominated, and the Roosters were able to deliver that. And on the day, the Eels didn't have an answer, could not bounce back, never really looked like bouncing back in that game. It was so, AJ, who is going to be key for the Roosters in this game?
It's hard to go past Toby Rodwell for me. I think his kicking game's going to be absolutely immense going forward. A couple of times he turned Parramatta around. He had that big 40-20, which it didn't lead to any points, but it just put the Roosters off the back foot.
Turned the screws, yeah.
After that individual try he scored when he dummied and went straight through them, I think he's going to be key. And I also think our outside backcourt is going to be key. Jackson Stewart's kind of coming to his own since Rex Bassingthwaite hurt his shoulder. He obviously hasn't come back into our side. He was a trainer trialist with the Chooks over summer as well, so that's another big out for us as well. But our back 5 have been really consistent over the final series. Heath, Lee, Nasser, Mahu, Delamere as far as their yardage work. And also Liam Bell's really stood up in the absence of Jackson Allen as far as just dictating out a dummy half, putting the forwards in particular positions where to go. And that just goes down to the coaching staff of what Boyd Corn has been able to do in his first year. We had Jake Friend there last year. He just fell short. He's now taken on a massive role within our big academy program. And what Boyd Corden has been able to do with that side this year has been second nature. And it would not surprise me one little bit if about 90% of this ball side went straight into flag.
Yeah, when you've got 2 talented teams the way the Eels and Roosters do, you could definitely see them heavily supplementing the flag rosters without a doubt. And having seen the Roosters up close a couple of times now, the talent levels in that team are very real. And 60s, it's going to come down for mine for how much can the Eels absorb that early pressure. And the Roosters got to them in week 1 of the finals, no doubt. They were very aggressive, great line speed, very physical at the point of contact, really challenged the Eels coming out of their own half. And the Eels wouldn't or couldn't roll up the sleeves and hold onto the ball. And that's what laid the platform. We mentioned in that Lisa Fiaola game for the Eels against the Dogs that the 2 errors led the tries for the Bulldogs in that game. It was the same case here in this one where errors, you mentioned Josiah Funarayuta there with that drop. There was another one as well where there was an error that led directly to a try, or the following set led to the try. And you can't afford to do that against a team like the Roosters. So if the Eels are going to be in this 160s, from a blue and gold angle obviously, they're going to need to have a high completion rate in the early exchanges. They're going to need to be willing to roll up the sleeves, work in numbers around the ball, because if you run isolated here against the Roosters, they've shown they're going to bring numbers and line speed and pick you off and drive you back. And that's going to put them in the box seat to win the game. And they've got the halves, they've got the weapons in both the back line and the back row to strike, and also obviously the front row too with Sevo, who was outstanding in that game in the week 1 of the finals. So for mine, the Eels have to be willing to roll up the sleeves, absorb the pressure. You want them to go out there and be aggressive and combative with the ball in hand too, and in defense as well. But for mine, it's about minimizing your errors against this very talented Tricolours team, because as the game opens up, you will get your chances. You will get your opportunities to strike. In that same game, we saw long-range efforts for Lincoln Fletcher and then Aiden Kaburian as well. So they will have the ability to strike, but they've got to work hard for it. And it's going to be a cracking game. Like you mentioned the flag talent that's going to be coming from this team. It's going to be more than flag from this team, AJ. The Roosters got some great ones here. They're going to go on to NRL honours at some point. So this is the makings of a great SG Ball Grand Final. And when I get to my predictions, I will tip the Eels, but I think the Roosters have a very strong position here. Eels, obviously the high-seeded team from the regular season, but the Roosters have shown styles make fights, and they've got the blueprint to challenge the Parramatta Eels in a big way.
Yeah, look, when I look at this Eels team, for mine, they're a classically structured team. You've got powerful forwards, you've got a spine that effectively plays off them, and you've got the outside backs that execute where they need to execute. And what we saw at different times during that season is, knowing that they've got those basics covered, the Eels are quite prepared to throw that ball around at times where you wouldn't expect them to. And it gave them the title that 40 gave them earlier in the season of the Cardiac Kids, where they were able to get a result where it looked like they were heading for defeat. Scored a couple of late tries here and there to get over an opponent. What to me spoke about what this team is capable of doing in attack was emphasised in one of the tries that was scored by Dom Ferrugia, where first of all they attacked down the left and you saw some outrageous second phase play, and then they worked back towards the centre, and then it was just the spine players. It just went from Kanaikis to Fletcher to Talatina to Bamblett and then to Ferrugia. And it was literally through the hands of the spine, out to the winger, over in the corner. And I looked at that and I thought, this says so much about what this team can do. They can go from this crazy ad lib to literally a training run with their spine. And look, I think against the Roosters worried me more than any other team this season. I feared Parramatta playing the Roosters in the grand final because of that. That physicality that they bring is really that's where the game's going to be won or lost for the Eels. I know what the Eels can produce in attack, but it's whether the forwards get that job done to allow that sort of play to happen. Now, do the Eels have the forwards that can do it? Most definitely. Most definitely. And based on what they did last week, I'm going to lean that way. So now it's time for us to give our predictions. AJ, starting with you again.
I like the Roosters in this one. I just think the way we went physically with Parramatta last time, it's going to be a big task for them to get up for that one again. I mean, they had the easier of the prelims as far as the way the scorelines ran out. They were able to put a bit more foot off the gas in a way against South Sydney, even though they had only conceded the one try. It just felt like everything came naturally for them in that second half, around defence, around contact. South Sydney kind of ran out of ideas. Parramatta were just able to read everything, while the Roosters had to really earn their win over Canberra in a way. They had to really bite down on the mouth guard, play aggressive with them, and we ended up getting the win in that one. But I think that the aggressiveness up front will work in our favour. I just am a little concerned about some minor little things. Like back in round 2, the Roosters opened up a 10-0 advantage. Parramatta were able to run that back, and then we had to work our way back into the game. First week of the finals, we got out hot. You guys just weren't able to match it. So the question is, how much has improved over the last little 2-week block to match it with that explosive start from the Roosters? With that in mind, I'm going to go 27-16. Toby Rodwell, player of the match.
And a Rodwell field goal, is that what you're predicting?
Yeah, Rodwell, disrespectful field goal.
I love a disrespectful field goal. Yeah.
John?
Look, I do think the Roosters probably are ahead of the Eels here just because of the matchup. But in saying that, I would have put them in as, or installed them as strong favourites if the Eels had another scrappy game in that grand final qualifier. The fact that the Eels rediscovered their mojo in such a convincing and compelling fashion, I think really balances the ledgers a bit. And I won't say it washes clean the previous meetings between the two teams, because those little psychological things do linger. But it gives the Eels a chance to be at their best here on Saturday. So in that vein, of course, I will back the Parramatta Eels, but it's going to be a fierce contest. I think it's going to be 2 to 4 points if the Eels get home. Maybe, I'm trying not to tread on the same ground before, maybe 20 to 18. And then best on field. Look, I know that if the Eels are the win, Lorenzo Talatine is going to be at the thick of it, and he's going to be one of my picks there. But if I had to go just not left field, but again, talking to that idea, 60s, that the Eels need to be competitive and combative up front, I think that means that someone like Ryder Talangi needs to really sort of carry the torch for the forward pack. So look to Ryder or Josiah or Lorenzo. And I know it's cheating a little bit, but that's the sort of, I think, the sort of mountain the Eels are trying to climb right now.
Okay, now just before I give my tips, just a reminder to our listeners that we've got our chat with Steve Georgallis, which is coming at the end of this podcast, and we'll get all of his insights about what's been happening this week and what might unfold in the grand finals. This one, to me, could very well be determined in that first 10, 15 minutes of the game. And I think if the Eels stay with the Roosters or get the better of them in those opening exchanges, then I can't see a way that the Eels would lose it. However, we've seen, history has now shown that the Roosters probably start better than any other team in this competition. And that's my concern there. We can't afford in a grand final for the Roosters to get a lead of 12 points or more in this game. Otherwise, someone like Toby Rodwell has that capacity to shut down an opponent with his kicking game. And look, I think I am going to go for the Eels to win this. I think the game will be closer to the round 2 match than it will be the first week of the finals. I'm going to tip a 24-20 victory to the Eels, and unfortunately that means it's still going to be more edge of the seat stuff out there at Leichardt on the day. And for best on field in this particular one, look, I'm going to go with Lincoln Fletcher in this. If he's 100%, and you were concerned, AJ, about him copying a knock in that game, but if he's 100%, this is the game where we need him to provide his version of Mitch Moses in controlling the game. And like Lorenzo provides the real flash moments, and Lincoln has that pace that he can play a game that's not dissimilar to Moses, in that he's got both a running game and a game management in his kit bag. But I'll tip him to be the best on field in this one. And that's notwithstanding the fact that I've said the forwards are going to have to get the job done in the middle. So I'll back your thoughts as well, John, about a forward maybe being the best on field as well. So, fellas, that concludes the Roosters and Eels game. We're going to now turn over to you, AJ, for your expertise in the Harold Mats, just to give us a rundown on the two teams competing in that and how you see the game going.
Thanks very much. 60s, and I think that it is going to be a tight grand final, this match one. We've seen the Warriors this year really put teams to the sword early. They finished in third. Newcastle finished in fourth, both on 14 points. There's only four forward against points separating these two sides this year. And Newcastle have done really well. They went down to Collegians in the first week of the finals. They tore shreds off Illawarra. And Illawarra were the top-ranked team in that competition. They were 7-1. They got a week off. They played the Central Coast Roosters in the third week of the finals. So the Roosters had all 5 teams that we had in the finals, which is a massive achievement for them. I think it might have been 6 teams. Yeah, 6 teams. My apologies. So they had 6 teams there, but that's not the point. They had to escape with a last-minute try through a nice setup play from Cooper Vitano, his older brother's Connor, who's in the top 30 at the Knights. He's playing New South Wales Cup fullback at the moment. Put it inside. Curtis Mulherron got the try. That got him away to 26-20. I had to watch that one on tape because I was out at Redfern calling the Warriors game on the weekend, and I am very impressed with this Warriors side. The more I see of them, the more I get to enjoy them. They were without their normal halfback, Ashton Ula Eremia, who picked up an injury in the first week of the finals. So they moved their lock, Tyson Hanson, into 5'8". He picked up a bit of a knock too, so there was a lot of pressure on their spine. Guys like Drayden Marriott, Jeremiah Lamana, this young fullback in particular, very, very good. He picked up a hat-trick in the game at Redfern Oval. I think his last step was about a 70-metre solo effort. He just charged it straight up the guts. And I really like this forward pack. Bishop Neal is one of those players you look at. He can be a bit rogue. I'm going to be completely honest here. He can be a bit rogue. But when he switches on, he is one of the most powerful forwards.
Yeah.
Dynamic, the footwork, it's all there with Bishop Neal. I really like watching him play. Byford as well, the lock forward. He is just a goer. I really like what I see from him. And then, who was the other one? McKaylee, number 8, Lucien McKaylee. He's a very strong forward that I've really enjoyed watching these last couple of weeks. But as far as the Knights are concerned, I mentioned Vitano earlier, but Cooper Townsend, the lock. He's another one that comes to mind as far as a player to watch there. Really powerful, good leg speed, really, really explosive stuff there. But if I had to give a tip, boys, I have to go with the Warriors in this one to go back-to-back. Maybe it's the bias from watching them play the last couple of weeks when I've called them in action, but they just seem heads and shoulders good at the moment. Like the way that they're playing, their physical balance up front. Sorry,
they got the pedigree as well of what they did last year, so they've hit the ground running in the junior reps in the Harold Matthews.
Very well.
Yeah,
they've done very well there, and I've been really impressed watching them play. And just the adversity they've had to go for. I mentioned losing their halfback; they lost their 5'8" last week. Their backup hooker was concussed off the first carry off a kickoff, so Drayden Marriott had to play more minutes than he ever imagined in the preliminary final. And there were some tough conditions to playing out at Redfern too. That early game, there was some rain about. It was a really cold morning out at Redfern Oval, and it was hard to sit there up in call in the box as well, the open air box. But if I have to go a winner, I'd say the Warriors probably get up about 24-14, and I like Bishop Neal as a man of the match.
Mate, outstanding. You've done a great job previewing that for our listeners. John, we've got our appointment with Steve Georgallis tomorrow, so I'm looking forward to our chat with him. Apart from that, AJ, are you calling any games this week?
I've got the week off, which is nice. I'll be heading out, though, to Wenny Park on Sunday to watch the Roosters Fleggen Cup, get my first glimpse of Dom Young in a New South Wales Cup jersey with Chad Townsend reconnecting on that right edge like they were in first grade.
And do you want to give your the league scene a bit of a plug?
Yeah, I would love to. So check us out on Twitter at League Scene Pod and on YouTube, The League Scene. We do the lower grade wrap every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. We put that out. Goes through every game for the New South Wales Cup, every game from the Queensland Cup. We pick out 3 players, and they're not just NRL players we pick out either. We go a little bit deeper. We look at the analysis for some of those out-of-contract players, and we really try and give everyone a fair go across the season. We don't just pick favourites with the NRL guys. But if there's some players that are out of form in New South Wales Cup that should be in NRL contention, we do give them a fair bit of a bake. So check us out every Wednesday night at 6 on YouTube.
And that's a great resource too for people who like to be on top of which players around the clubs are maybe deserve to be in NRL but aren't. And people like to be armchair recruitment officers for their respective clubs. So the league scene is a great resource for people that are looking to take a bit of an interest in up-and-coming players. John, any final words before we sign off?
No, I'm really pumped for a massive weekend, boys, and it's been awesome to have AJ on to give us the other side of the ledger here for those previews. And like I said, regardless of the outcomes, and obviously both teams or both clubs want the 3-0 in their favour, I think that the Roosters and the Eels can be incredibly proud to be the first franchises in the same year to have 3 teams represented in the Junior Rep Grand Finals, which is just a huge effort from both clubs. So well done.
And so thank you to both of you for this. Thank you to our viewers and listeners to this. But please stand by as we have our special guest, Steve Georgallis, joining us for the second half of this podcast.
In what is a historic week for the Eels, 3 of our junior rep teams will be involved in their respective grand finals this Saturday at Leichardt Oval. Throughout this season, we've been privileged to be joined by the Eels Elite Pathways Coaching Director, Steve Georgallis, and we're very pleased to have him join us again today for this special grand final preview. Steve, welcome once again to our podcast.
Thanks, Craig, and it's great to be here, especially with 3 teams in the grand final this weekend.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. And before we look at each of the games, there must be quite a buzz around the club about the achievements so far.
Yeah, everyone's ecstatic that we've got 3 teams in the grand final, and I suppose they've all did it the hard way. The 2 teams that made the top 4 lost their first game and obviously had to play every week to get to their grand finals, and Tarsha Gale were always in the elimination straight up. So, and then obviously in the Tarsha Gale raid, it was I think it's the 5th team playing the 7th team, so no one in the top 4 made it there. So it's been an interesting 4 weeks, and most enjoyable for us involved in the pathways that we've got 3 teams in the grand final, and probably may want to talk about it later, but the Harold Maths were quite unlucky in their game, and 1-on-1 steal and a try in the last minute cost them, obviously a chance of going further in the competition. But Josh Hodgson did a great job with that team.
Yes, we will actually touch on the Harold Mats after we go through each of the grand finals.
Yeah, and I mean, you sort of hinted at some of those amazing results there. The bottom 4 grand final between the Roosters and the Eels and the Tarsha Gale. The Lisa Fiaola obviously overcoming a Herculean task to get there. So on that sort of vein, in that context, is it fair to say that the results this season have validated the club's decision to employ coaches in a full-time capacity in the junior representatives?
Oh, definitely. I think, coaches that are here, able to talk amongst, even the head coaches, Jason Riles, myself, all the pathways people. James Shepherd's had experience in coaching as well. And it does validate the fact that, we've had those results and our players are developing week in, week out. Obviously Shah Henry's not full time, but she's been here for a while, and we've been able to watch her grow as a coach as well, and her team grow, and again, they've deserved their opportunity this weekend.
So let's start with the Lisa Fiaola team. That victory over the Bulldogs was one of the most remarkable performances that we've seen in female pathways. With the Dogs enjoying an average score of 50-4 in 2025, how did Ryan Walker and the team do what no other team could even get close to achieving?
That's a good question. Ryan had a lot of belief in his team. I think it goes back to round 9. It was round 9 here at Kellyville, and we scored first. And we led, and obviously all of a sudden our players thought, oh wow, you can score against this team early, and we can be dominant in certain parts of the game. Obviously, physically, they'll always be dominant because they're bigger than us. So I think what Ryan explained to his team is if we can hold the ball and control the ball and have our fair share of the ball, there's opportunities for us, obviously, to score tries, but stop them scoring. I think in that game, their completion rate wasn't the best. They come up with a few errors at the wrong time, which allowed the Bulldogs to score back-to-back tries. And I think that's where the Bulldogs in that grade assume control and win games quite convincingly.
And one try becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes 4 very quickly.
Yeah, that's spot on. So against the Bulldogs at the Oaks, where we played them in the final, which was
way out
towards Picton. They played a game which was about getting in their face, making sure that they didn't have too much room, control the ball and hold the ball. And every opportunity they got to score or to keep chase, to hold them down there, they capitalised on it. And watching the game, I think everyone that was there was watching the game, and as the game went on, we scored, they scored, we scored, they scored, and they never got that opportunity to score back-to-back tries.
Yes.
And we always just kept in the game. And our completion rate, I think in the second half, was nearly 90%, which enabled us to stay in that game. And I suppose everyone knows now that we won that game, but I suppose at the end, I think it was Georgallis come up with a
shot out of a great tackle.
Yeah, came out of that line and made a one-on-one tackle, which stopped the Bulldogs scoring in that last 20 or 30 seconds. But yeah, it was just one of those games. And to be honest, I thought we would, I'll be honest, I thought we would struggle with their physicality and their size. But Ryan gave them belief. I think as the game went on, the players had belief.
Yeah, you saw it starting to manifest, and you mentioned it, that how big and physical the Dogs were. The Eels had a great bend but not break philosophy in defence. They gave up metres through the middle, but not the line breaks. They didn't let the Dogs.
That's spot on. And when they did make a line break, we had a really great chase back.
Great cover defence.
And we defended.
Some good tackles from the fullback Yuri Severe as well.
Yeah,
They had a fantastic game.
And I think the players have got better and better as the season's gone on.
Yep.
I thought the combination between the hooker Bailey and Tamika Withers
was
really good on a weekend.
Real good game planning there too. Bailey kicking out a dummy half to try and turn the Dogs around. Tamika taking control. She scored a great try, sort of gliding through down that left edge. But mate, the drama from this game, it was almost like it was on a script.
Yeah.
Just like you said, the tit for tat, the try for try, the big moments. Bailey taking the lead by banging it in off the upright off the penalty goal. I almost fainted at the end of it.
And it sort of set up for them to score
to
that
break
last
our
match.
hearts at the end.
And I think that's what was so good about the game, that we held on and we had deserved to win that game because of all the effort.
There has not been a more earned result I've seen in the junior representative 60s than what we saw on Saturday for the Lisa Fiaola. And there were two other great results for the Parramatta Eels that we're going to cover, of course, but that game I think stood out among all three of them in what was a historic weekend for the club.
Yeah, just seeing them take the Bulldogs into that areas they hadn't been before, the scoreboard pressure, fatigue, none of the things that they would have been familiar with. And especially any of the girls in their team that have been there for 2 years. Because it's been 2 years of domination by them.
First ever loss for their program in the Lisa Fiaola.
I suppose, we can talk about how good the game was, etc., but Ryan Walker's done a great job at saying, that we won, but now this is
time
our
to
main
reset
game.
your focus.
Reset our focus for the grand final.
And that was always the concern, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The emotional high of beating the Bulldogs. Was it going to undermine their preparation this week? And obviously we still have to wait and see till Saturday, but clearly Ryan Walker's trying to get a good grip on it and then refocus them for the result against the Central Coast Roosters now, which does lead me to my question. Because looking now at that grand final, they'll be matching up again against the Central Coast Roosters, looking to reverse the result from their clash in the Week 1 finals, where they went down 24-14. The Roosters raced out to an 18-0 lead in 14 minutes in that game and completely usurped control of that result from the Eels on the back of that opening barrage. How do they ensure that last week wasn't their grand final, as we spoke about? And in the context of the Roosters, what do you take out of that first week finals loss in the game plan this week?
Yeah, I think in that first loss we didn't start well.
Yeah.
You always have in the back of your mind if you do lose that you've got an extra chance, but I don't think that was the issue. There wasn't complacency. We had a poor start, and we never ever recovered. And like you said, the Roosters shot out to that big lead, and then we tried to get them back, but you just can't. And the Roosters are a different team compared to the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs are a more physical team that try and go through the middle. The Roosters have got plenty of skill. We'll attack our edges.
Yes, they loved using the edges in that game there.
So we're going to have to be better with our D, obviously our defence on our edges, and make sure that we're getting up. But I think the biggest thing we can take out of the Bulldogs game in relation to the Roosters game is the way we started. So against the Bulldogs, we started well, we completed well, we got to our kick, and we got into that grind. That game that we played against the Roosters, the first the first final, we didn't do that.
No.
So in the last 3 weeks we have, and I think that's what we'll take into this game. It's going to be a different type of game to the Bulldogs because both teams can score and both teams, have got exciting players that can do things individually. So yeah, it'll be, hopefully it won't be a, try we score, they score. Hopefully it'll be, but it may be.
Well, I guess if it gets down to that the girls should take confidence out of being able to navigate a win from those sort of circumstances the week before against the Bulldogs. So
yeah, if anything, they gain that belief and the understanding of, playing that football where you're completing high, your defence is good, you're chasing everything, you're competing on all the 1%ers, and I think they understand that after the last 3 weeks that that will enable you to be in a position to win a game.
Yep.
And now moving ahead to the Tarsha Gale team, they proved that round 9 victory over the Bulldogs wasn't a flash in the pan by accounting for them and probably even more convincingly last week. How has Shah Henry unlocked the best from them over the past month?
Yeah, look, Shah's done a magnificent job with that team because she's had a few injuries in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Sammy, the centre, she's been out for the last 1 or 2 weeks. Obviously, Alana Lachlan, she's HIA, so she's got to do protocol, so she can't play this week, which is really disappointing for her because she's been really playing some good football.
Great impact from the bench.
Yeah, defensively tying in, cleaning up, running the ball hard, doing everything.
Aggressive post-contact meters. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that, they'll miss her, but again, on the flip side of that, they've just found players that have just, have that mentality of, I'm next up, so I've got to do my job, and they have. She's done a magnificent job with that team. Forward-wise, that's their strength.
Oh, there's some fearsome middles in that team.
Tess McWilliams and River, they've really started to play some really good football.
And Taylor Falanico has been a good foil to them too.
Yeah, and Taylor, yes. And Kylie has been going okay at 5'8". It's a different position for her.
We were speaking about that in the preview, or part of his preview podcast earlier in our recording. Craig was talking to AJ about the incredible journey that Kylie has had this year, starting as an impact bench forward, playing through the middle, showcasing her ball playing skills, stepping into that starting lock role, then out to the centres, then the 5'8". It's like a reverse Ruben Wiki. It's
yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, we had obviously Rivers, the number 13. And Kylie has come. This is her first year in Tarsha Gale. And she earned her spot in the 17, and then obviously she's worked hard off the bench into that 13 role. Then obviously playing a little bit of centre when we had a few injuries there, and then she slipped into 5'8", and she's doing a really good job. But she's got a lot to learn.
Still a raw prospect, but that's what makes it so exciting.
But again, that's that thing about next up mentality that Shah's been able to get out of her team, and everyone playing where they need to play in positions. It's basically a team. We'll do our job. We'll go out there, and you're right. The first time they beat the Bulldogs obviously wasn't a fluke because they've beat them again, and they've played good, consistent football, high completion rate. Working really well on those 1%ers, working hard for a marker, kick chase, all that sort of stuff. And again, if they can complete high, and I think again on the weekend they completed near 80% for the game, they're in a great chance. And to win that game. And obviously they're playing a team like the Roosters, who, you know, they've earned their trip to the grand final as well.
The word that Shah has used and I've used when we've conversed about the team has been the team identity. That's what they found as a group, their identity. What does that mean in the context of a team? You know, if a team finds their identity.
Well, what it means is that everyone knows what they need to do regardless of where they play. So for instance, on the weekend we had a Matawisha. She went from back row to centre, all right? But she still knew her job, what she needed to do at centre. Then you had River, she had to go to back row. You know, we've had a few of those changes in the last 2 or 3 weeks where we get a few injuries and people know exactly what they need to do in these different positions. So they've trained that way as well, and that's their identity. You know, they're not. You know, sometimes players will go, I prefer to play centre, I don't want to play on the wing, or, you know.
Yep.
This team doesn't do that. This team goes, right, if I have to play there, I'll play there, and it's for the team's benefit, and that will allow us to win as a team. So they're basically knowing what each other's doing, but they also know that if they have to move, it's for the good of the team, and that's their identity. They do everything for their team.
And it speaks volumes to the team journey as well, because they had that mid-season stumble coming out of the bye, got ambushed by the Sharks, then threw away a game against Penrith Panthers. Should have beaten the Illawarra Steelers too, who were one of the top teams in the competition, but they squandered an opportunity there. That could have spiralled so quickly into missing the finals or bombing out the finals in the first week. But like you said, the players rolled up their sleeves, put their hands up and said, I'm going to buy in. So fantastic job to the squad and to the coach, Shah. And again, that moves us on to our grand final question now, mate. And we mentioned it, but this is a very interesting clash on paper. It's a bottom 4 bracket clash. It's the Parramatta Eels in 5th versus the 7th place Roosters. These two teams have not met this year. So what will we be expecting from the Roosters Indigenous Academy, and how much does not playing that team, given that both the Fiaola and the SG Ball have met their opposition already, how much does not meeting the Indigenous Academy this year change or shape that clash?
Well, you don't know what to expect. So you go back to the way that they've been playing. Tarsha have been playing that consistent football, kick the corners, get into the grind, earn the right, obviously, to play footy. We don't know how they'll play. We've seen, we obviously watched their video. And they've got plenty of skill, like move the ball around. Again, they're different to a Bulldogs team.
Yeah.
They're probably more like a West Tigers team that they've played, where they can move the ball.
Change the point of attack.
Yeah. So defensively, again, on our edges, we're going to have to be good compared to what they were last week, where they had to be strong in the middle. Again, forwards win matches, so if our forwards, play the way that they've been playing the last few weeks, that'll take them a long way on being competitive and obviously trying to win that grand final.
Now, moving on to the SG Ball, Steve. In my report on the game, I said that it was a return to regular programming for that team, because I thought they returned to close to their best against South at Redfern. What impressed you the most about that victory?
I think for those that were out at the game, South were throwing everything at our boys, and they did really, really well to defend. They made a few line breaks, we chased, we got back. There's a few penalties go against us. And then again we got back into the game, but the thing that impressed me most about our team was that we stuck with it. We didn't go away from the game plan that Mitch had given them, and Souths are a good team, and they've got some players in there that can really do things as individuals, and you saw that now and then. I think they got as close as 12 points to us, but that was the most impressive. And you're right, they're back to where they should be. I think physically they were hitting like they had been previously. Their line speed was good. There was plenty of sting in their tackles.
That second half, there was a number of players who just unloaded, forwards and backs.
They basically brutalised Souths in that game.
And that's what they had been doing previously. And I think for whatever reason, the last 1 or 2 weeks, they've gone away from that. And now they're back. And good time to be back because we're in the grand final.
Jeez,
Saturday.
it really underscores the importance of being able to win ugly too. That game
Yes.
against Melbourne the week before, where they were nowhere near their best, and the Melbourne Storm asked some big questions. They were, speaking of big, that was a big Melbourne Storm team, very physical, and the Eels had to absorb a lot of pressure, and they got through, and that gave them the extra time to rediscover their moxie. Because against South Sydney, mate, that was them back near their best, like we said. I couldn't believe the ball skills we saw on display, considering the conditions.
Yeah. Actually, that was all the games on the weekend.
Yeah.
It was dewy and
Yep, greasy,
like to
dewy.
get completion rates of up near 80%
Yeah.
and that sort of conditions, and especially in finals football. You're right. It's really good, and that just goes back to the coaches and the foundations and the skills that they make sure that they do every session, every week.
I thought that the part that really typified what they're capable of was they had some outrageous offloads in a play going down the left wing.
Yep.
And I think maybe it might have been Aidan Kaborian that got the
Kaborian
flick.
came back with
the flick
from Anders Johansson, I think it was, and then he came back in field and offloaded himself.
Yeah, and then when they settled the play, it just went through the spine
Just switched
out to
gears
Dom
into
Perugia
shape.
for the almost looked like a training run. The way that the spine linked to create the overlap for Dom to score in the corner, and I thought they've gone from outrageous
Second phase,
ad lib play
and just switched into shape. in the blink of an
Into
eye.
structure.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's a sign of a good team.
It is. Yeah.
When you play ad lib football and then go back into your structure, your game plan.
Yep.
Then if you need to go out of it, you can, but always go back into it.
Yeah.
I suppose errors occur when you don't know when to do things, like game management wise. And Lincoln Fletcher and I think Lorenzo and Cam out the back, they're playing some really good football now. They're controlling that team, and obviously the hooker Rocky Kanakis is he's been kicking the last few weeks and getting them on the front foot, which obviously gives them another point of difference attacking wise.
Yep.
So their spine's been consistently the same all year.
Yes, they've had obviously Cameron came in to the fullback role in the back end of the season, but the 1, 6 and 7, sorry, the 6, 7 and 9 have been the same.
Yes.
Once
the majority of the year.
Lorenzo was back now free, and Cameron's just slotted in perfectly. He's been a great foil to what the other three do on the spine, and I believe he's a year young actually in the SG ball, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so they're all working quite well together, and they understand each other's game, which is great.
And we're obviously not part of the coaching staff, but even as spectators, there was a nervous wait because a few players put on a report in that game. So I was anxiously awaiting that team list coming out on Tuesday, pending the status of a couple of the big forwards there, because the Eels are going to need those big forwards because they're taking on the Sydney Roosters. And this is the team that has challenged Parramatta more than any other side this season, Steve. They've had a draw back in round 2. They ambushed them in the first week of the finals, 32-12 was it, Sixties, I believe. Big win there. A lot of physicality, a lot of lines, a lot of aggression, a lot of disruption in the ruck. Why were they able to be so effective against us in that regard? And what does the coach Mitchell Lewis focus on this week in order to then flip that result and get the Eels the win in the most important game of the year?
I think it goes back to what you said before about sometimes if you know the team that you're playing, and depending on what you did in your previous losses, you can work on that. So they know what to expect now from the Roosters, and I think what you said before was the physicality. So last week our physicality came back, and that's what we need against the Roosters. So if we're any hope of winning that game, because let's be fair, we lost to them twice. Had a draw and a loss. We have to be physical, and I think last week was a great sign that we're back in the physicality stakes, but we've got to turn up. Mm-hmm. You just can't expect it to happen, and I think sometimes you get caught in that trap where you expect it to happen. And I think Mitch will have them ready to go for the start of that game. It's a great game too on paper, isn't it, Sixties? This is two very talented squads. I think there'll be a large number of kids that progress deep towards an NRL debut at some point from both squads. So obviously people listening to this podcast are going to be tuning in for the game, but if there are any neutrals, I do recommend watching this one. It's going to be an absolute barn burner. Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you say that about turning up expecting to win. I thought maybe the Fleet might have been guilty of that in the first week against the Roosters, in the first half against the Roosters last week, against South. And
jeez, that's a cardinal sin, mate. Come on.
And they turned around the second half, Obviously Jordan Rankin had a few choice words at halftime, just refocus them. But that making sure you're there for that game, it's so important.
It doesn't matter who you play. I mean, anyone can beat anyone. I mean, it was the same in the NRLW season last year.
Yeah.
Anyone can beat anyone, and if you turn up, you're halfway there.
Yeah.
And obviously you've got to be playing some good football to win games, and it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
And so it's a physical game, and if you're not ready for the physicality of rugby league, chances are you will get beat at the end.
Now we touched on this right at the start of our chat, and that's the mats, because they're not featuring this week. That's because in the from the last time that we spoke, they bowed out in the first week of the finals. What was your opinion on that match, and how do you view their season as a whole?
Yeah, we had high hopes for that team. They've got some really good players.
They do, yeah.
And there was a few from last year that backed up. Obviously, we're a year young. Lincoln and Cyrus and players like that. But unfortunately, they just had injury after injury after injury, probably in the middle more than anything. And when you start losing middles and predominantly centres, they're very hard to replace.
Yeah.
But they got through that period, and Josh refocused them, and he concentrated on the simple things, and they started to play some really good football to get back into the finals contention. And it wasn't until 1 or 2 games before the season ended that they had to win.
Yeah.
So they probably started their elimination series probably round 6.
Yes,
round 7.
They did.
And they finally got to the finals, and they were playing some really good football against the Central Coast Roosters. There's that name again, Roosters. And they're in a position to win that game. And I think one of their players, with 1 or 2 minutes to go, did a 1-on-1.
Yeah.
It was a big play, and you can warn players about 2 or 3 minutes to go. Either the short kickoff or watch out for the one-on-ones. But it happened, and then last tackle they run the ball, and we didn't come off our line, and they scored. So it was really disappointing for Josh and his team. But it was the one play which cost them an opportunity to go any further. But looking back, you think to yourself, well, yeah, that was the one play that cost them, but to get to where they did and to play in the finals was a big achievement for Josh and his team after all the early setbacks they had at the beginning of the year.
And I think they were a team that, if they got through that first week, could have just as easily advanced
we'll be
or
talking
further.
about it right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. I think the Central Coast Roosters got as far as last weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and you're right, I think we always talk about the team, but I think the Warriors are playing Newcastle in the match.
Well, we did get the Knights in the first round. I think from memory we got the last second try
to win that game.
Yeah, the big prop forward from New Zealand, right?
Yes.
But he's one of the players we've been missing for most of the year. I've forgotten his name now. I'm sorry.
He got. Didn't he have?
Are you talking about our team?
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah. Was that
I think he missed the last two weeks.
Yeah. Was it? Did he have a concussion? Was it concussion protocols or suspension?
Well, I think it was both. I think he had suspension and an injury.
Yeah. So those where it's been injury or suspension has definitely impacted the team. And look, again, you reflect on that. It's a rookie coach who's done a good job in his first year and just sort of getting a hand on how to pilot a young squad of men. And the thing is with what Hodgson did, some of the concepts that the Harold Matthews were employing were really high level NRL stuff, like between the spine, doing really, really sharp short side plays, outside, inside, interchange between the halves and the fullback. Like they were executing that brilliantly, but the consistency, I suppose, on the floor of things was what came back to bite them a number of times. Between just defensive lapses, 60s, we saw runs of play going against them, which is not uncommon in the junior reps. You drop the ball once or twice, and the opposition team can score 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that, and I always say to Josh, when I first started my coaching career a long time ago, 25 years ago, I started at SG ball level.
Yep.
And I think it's great to start at that level, because not only do you learn how to deal with players that are learning their craft, you're helping them mentally understand what a game is like, game
And
management.
it almost reinforces those core concepts to you as a coach, doesn't it?
Yes, spot on. And then as you go through the grades, and there's no doubt Josh will, you lean back at those experiences as you go through the grades, and then you start coaching players that obviously at a higher level that are more developed than the young kids that you've got. Then you realise that the foundations and the basics that you always talk about with players, it never changes.
No, like you said, rugby league's a simple game. And obviously one of my favourite quotes I've used before is that league is a simple game played by simple people. Rugby union's a complex game played by wankers.
I'm not commenting.
But
you're saying I'm a simple person.
no, but it's true, isn't it? From Harold Matt's talent squads all the way through to the NRL. While yes, there are really fancy attacking concepts you can use and great shapes and different little trick plays, end of the day, the team that executes fundamentally through the middle and clean hands out wide, they're going to win more often than not.
And basically turns up for the physicality part of the game.
Yes, that's why
and then you talk about teams that are getting ambushed, it's because they're not ready for the physical part of the
exactly.
game.
And not ready to roll up their sleeves in a given game. That's been true for the 100+ years of the game's inception.
Even the pre-season here with the NRL, the focus that was put on fundamental skills, with Scotty Wisemantle was working with the team on, and it was like from the start of the pre-season all the way through, and it took it right back to the real fundamentals of that. And I guess the other thing too is you've got the pathways coaches that are there seeing the NRL coach, getting right back to fundamentals, so it reinforces that message.
I mean, there's nothing worse in a one-on-one situation, sorry, not a one-on-one situation. Someone makes a break, and all you got to do is catch pass, and they can't pass.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you bomb a try. Someone makes a break down the sideline, and you can't make a low tackle, take him out.
Yeah,
you
come
go
down.
behind, get palmed off.
Yeah.
Fundamentals like that
They
the kids need to know before they get up to that level of playing NRL, where everyone is talented.
We won't dive into it here because we probably end up talking for too long. But we were even discussing the other day on the podcast about sometimes the game itself doesn't reward fundamentals, like those good low tackles where the players are brought down and they're not, and then the referee's like, get up.
So, but this is a conversation that's been had by coaches, obviously behind the scenes, right? That the grass cutter tackle, there is no.
Well, and when we talk about the hip drop, which is very prevalent in our game, the hip drop's all to do with trying to control the ruck and getting the player behind you. And so, whereas if you were allowed to make a low tackle like we used to,
you get
years ago,
like we were all trained to do when we were playing as kids.
There is no hip drop.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So that, I think you're right. As coaches, when someone's attacking on the try line, it's a no-no to go low because chances are it's either going to be quick play the ball or they're going to
quick play the ball, reach out or offload. Like just something's coming.
Yeah. So we learn to tackle high or around the ball, which is good, but it's not really good for a halfback who's probably predominantly all through his career learnt to use his shoulder under the ball.
Yep.
But there's no credit for that from the referee. I mean, you get up, play the ball, and you're out of play.
I know I was always a big kid, and what I always used to hate was a halfback chopping my legs out from underneath me.
Jamming you up underneath.
It
stops you dead.
Yeah, and there's a dominance in that just isn't rewarded by the referee's interpretation.
Just because you can't wrestle in the tackle doesn't mean it's not a dominant tackle, and that's the issue the game faces. And obviously, this is a big discussion.
We see we're going to go down.
Geez, it is always interesting to hear this kind of insight from a man that has got, as you said, 25 years of coaching experience behind him.
Yep.
And that's maybe we can do a roundtable at some point with some of the other bright minds here, because the code needs to figure something out.
And I'll finish on this. We teach our girls to tackle that way because at the end of the day, as we said before, predominantly if you can get under the ball with your shoulder and make a legs tackle, it's the best way to tackle someone one-on-one. Sometimes if you try and tackle someone high and go over the ball, chances are you're going to fall off the ball.
Bounce out, exactly.
And it'll be a quick play to ball. So we're still teaching our players to defend that way. But obviously you've got to teach them about the 2 ends, the 3 ends, over the ball, all that sort of stuff. But predominantly tackle tech and having a safe tackle check is probably our biggest foundation in the pathways going all the way through.
Well, let's now get you to put on that other coach's hat, which is the NRLW coach's hat. How proud are you to have 3 players involved in this week's State of Origin match?
Very proud. Great for Abby. Obviously she got second last year in the Dally M's and she deserved all the accolades. She was by far a player that turned up every week for our team. High energy, one of the leaders in our group. So I was so happy for her that she got rewarded with, obviously John Strange saw the same things that we see in her.
Yep.
And picked her for New South Wales. So I can see her excelling in that arena, so I'm so happy for her. Kennedy, she worked so hard to get back and put herself in a position to be in that team. She missed the last 2 or 3 games last year, but again, so happy for her because that was one of her goals to get back into that team.
And she plays with such passion too.
Yeah, and again, another one, high energy. And then obviously Rory, racing car Rory.
Yes,
so,
on the debut season, fighting away into, it's the wrong team, of course, but
yeah,
you can't blame her being born in
Queensland
Queensland.
supporters here. I'm so happy for her, and Rory is one of the most humble people you'll ever meet, and it was like, I've made the Queensland team, I just want to play footy.
That sounds about right, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I'm so happy for her, and obviously she played for the Australian, is it Prime Ministers?
Yes,
the
the
she played a bit of rep football there, so and it's great for the club to have 3 players in the State of Origin. Just goes to show the pathways for the players coming up here into the Parramatta NRLW, and now we've got 2 of the younger girls, Lisa Fiaola and Tarsha Gale in the grand final, so the future looks bright for the NRLW.
Some might even say they've got a pretty decent coach.
No, not experienced. Been here a few times. Yeah. So, look, at the end of the day, you still need the players, and all the players that I've got that are playing in our squad in the NRLW. They're all good people, and if you've got good people, you're halfway there. And obviously, we've just got to learn about the different parts of the game, the physicality, which I thought we were much better at last year. Defensively, we were better. I think it's something that we can take out of last year that I'll be talking to the girls when we start training. It's just how we defended our try line, never gave up, always turned up. I think that was one of our better aspects of our performances last year.
I guess when you talk about having good people, when you've got good people, that must add an extra level of enjoyment to your job as a coach as well, to work with people like that.
Definitely. As a coach, that's why you coach, because you want to see, you want the best for the players that you've got, but when you have players that, respect everyone else around them, respect the team, respect obviously this great facility that we have here at Kellyville now, and then you see them succeed like the 3 that are going to play State of Origin, it makes you proud as a coach. Yeah, so that's the main reason you coach, just to see them. You basically living as an ex-player, you're living through them.
Yes, yeah.
And look, Steve is very humble, but the team responded magnificently to him last year, and I think that for obviously Kennedy's been a rep player before, but for Abby and Rory, that is part of the journey too, is what the work he's done there. So well done, mate. You do deserve a pat in the back. I'm not being facetious there. But look, I'm going to try and turn this podcast around really quickly, 60s. I'm going to try and get back home and get into the edit room. But by the time most people listen to the episode, odds are the result will be known from tonight's game, State of Origin. Can you give us a tip anyway? Just how are the Blues going to win, of course, and who's going to star?
I'm going to have to tip New South Wales, of course. Unfortunately. I think it'll be a tight game.
Yes.
I just think that it'll be a bit like the Bulldogs versus Eels game and Lisa Fiaola. It'll be tat for tat and see who can control the ball the best. And it's both teams have been training like 5-6 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure
big Origin camps.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they're ready to rumble, play some good footy, and we don't want to see it, but I wouldn't mind a little bit of the old biff coming out. But
and of course, the big thing, we want all 3 of our girls to come through unscathed. So hopefully they can all play starring roles. and just get back in time for eventually back for NRLW pre-season training, which we're going to talk about shortly. But throw it to you now, 60s.
Yeah, so I guess just to wrap things up, what sort of news would you have for our listeners on the NRLW front?
Yeah, so we'll be back training Monday the 12th of May we start. Paige from the UK, she's arrived and she's settled. She's come in once or twice for a check-in with BJ.
Bit of orientation.
Yeah, and she's really loving it and enjoying it. Fleur's arrived from Queensland. They actually won their equivalent of Tarsha Gale last week at the BMD. She was playing fullback.
She made the Queensland 19s team.
Yeah, she's made the Queensland 19s team. So she's turning 19. She'll not turn 19, I think, in the season proper. And
just a parachuter into the Tarsha Gale team.
Yeah, well, that's what we talked about. But I don't do
No,
that.
it wouldn't.
And we were struggling for outside backs too. And Martha's come from New Zealand, so she's arrived. And Roche, one of the Harvey Norman players from last year, she's at her development spot, so she's ready to go. And obviously Tess and River, who are playing Tarsha Gale this week, they're our other two development players. So development-wise, we're looking at forwards. We've got on the other end of the scale, obviously MJ, Elsie, they're getting towards the end of their career, and we have to look at the younger players coming through and who's ready to take their place. So, Elsie and obviously MJ have still got 1 or 2 years left in them, but we're looking for the future.
It's that succession plan.
Yeah. And when you've got two teams like the Fiaola and Tarsha in the grand final, there's plenty of, we want to keep our best players here and keep our best players at the club to make sure that they come through and they come through the right way and they have a few years of, learning the game. Sometimes you can rush young players into that arena, and you've seen it happen before in the men's game. And
Yep.
They sort of get spat out. But hopefully we've got the right pathway for these players to come through and eventually play in NRLW.
It hasn't, it hasn't really struck me, but you mentioned dev players there. Obviously with the NRL, we know that from round 1 you can use your top 30, you can use your development list players, and then after round 10 you have access to your second tier roster. How does that work with the NRLW? Are dev players available from round 1, or is there a timeline to use?
No. So basically your development players are players that if you have an injury, you can call upon and bring them in.
With dispensation?
Yeah. But you use players 1 to 24. If you get a season-ending injury, then you can replace that player. You can replace him with a dev player, or if it's not a position, for instance, just say I lost a centre or a winger, I don't really have that covered in dev. I would have to go outside and look for a player, or from my Harvey Norman team and bring them up. So basically you've got 1 to 24 for the majority of the season. Again, it's 11 rounds, it's not a full season, but you can use your dev players. This year I've made sure that the dev players could come up. I think Tess and River, possibly if I need them, can come up. Roche had
a very good year in Harvey.
And the other one was Kate Fallon, who was in my squad last year.
Yes, who was very close last year. It felt like looking at those.
Yeah, so those girls can all come up if need be. So that's how it works. So it's a bit different to the men's game, and we can't use any other player outside our top 24 unless we get an injury, and that player has to be like for like.
It makes it really important then that we had that Harvey Norman women's team as well, not only for that transition of the younger players being able to come in and play at that level and get a bit of open age experience, but also that they're playing week to week football at parallel with the NRLW team.
Yeah, and the good thing about it too is we've got Wentworthville as well that have a relationship with us, and we've got our own Harvey Norman team that Mickey Withers coaches, and both teams that are playing, I can watch their games and obviously talk to their coaches about how their players are going. For instance, last year, Brianna Eels was playing.
Came from Wenty.
Yeah, she was in the Broncos system, and then she tried to get to us, and I said, look, we're we're full at the moment, but I've got another feeder team in Wentworthville, and so she went to Wentworthville, she played there, started there, got an injury, was able to pick her up from Wentworthville, and then able to put her in our systems, and she's earned now obviously a top 20 spot for this year. So the beauty of having two feeder teams, but also, you know, having, like you said, Lisa Fiaola, Tarsha, Gale, Harvey Norman straight into NRLW, and everyone doing the same thing. You know, it only goes well for the future of the women's game out here at Parramatta.
Any last questions, 60s, or you want to wrap this one up?
No, look, this has been. We really appreciate the time that you've given us again today, Steve. We probably dived a little bit deeper in a few areas than we planned.
Fun chat. Yeah, it's been awesome as always. We cannot thank you enough for being so generous of your time. We know that all the listeners and now watchers of the Cumberland Throw on the tip sheet are hugely appreciative, just like we are, to get I don't think any other club provides this kind of insight to their pathways. So, and they're an LW too. So, Steve, thank you so much. Of course, we'd like to wish all three teams that are in action this weekend all the best of luck. We're looking forward to, one way or another, a historic weekend for the Eels and the Roosters. Just incredible to have three teams from both sides in those three grand finals. So to the players, the staff, to yourself, mate, best of luck and good luck on Saturday.
Thanks, John. Thanks, Craig. Always great talking to you guys from that Cumberland Throw.
Thanks, Steve.
You,
No worries. Take care.